Again, today's topic is federal capture opportunity background. And so what I want to talk about when I say opportunity background is, where is this opportunity coming from? We know that when we look at an opportunity, we might look at the task areas. For example, in the past few days, I've done videos on understanding the technical requirements. Today, I'm talking about just the opportunity. Where's it coming from? And why is it kind of getting to this stage? Why does the government want it to come forward? How have they been procuring it? And this is different than understanding their challenges and their objectives, which I'll actually talk about in the next couple of days. And so when you understand the background, you really can begin to understand the opportunity and how you might shape it. So I'll talk about that in a minute. I describe federal sales, the beginning part of business development, which is building relationships with federal agencies, as well as identifying opportunities, right? That's the basics of business development to me. And then capture is about a single opportunity. How do I win that opportunity? When I submit a proposal, how do I have the best chance of winning? What you do in capture gives you the best chance of winning. And so that's why you see me go into these details, like understand the background, or tomorrow's topic of understand the challenges. And then the Friday's topic is understand the objectives. And so I really want you to think about this as we go forward and how they relate to each other. So as we go forward, one misunderstanding sometimes people have, even when I explain it to them, and it takes me a little bit of time to help them understand this. And so talking to you today helps me really refine how I'm teaching this, is that there's a difference between what you see in an opportunity PWS. If you download something from SAM and you look at it, it's got documents like a performance work statement. You'll see a section in there called background. That background is not the background about the opportunity. It generally is the background about the buyer, the directorate of this or that, the background of maybe a little bit of the requirement or scope stuff they're trying to do. Like, hey, we've been using Oracle for the last 10 years and the databases and the tools that Oracle has or something. So they're giving you the background of the tech, but they're not giving you the background of the opportunity. And what I'm saying here is you want to understand the background of the opportunity in order to understand all the details that are outside the PWS as you look at this. So today I'm going to be doing a little less talking about the what and more about where can you go to learn about the background. Because I think telling you that at where to go, you'll begin to understand what you're getting as I do that. So the first place you can go is sam.gov, right? There's a lot of different tools I'm going to talk about. Sam.gov, obvious place to go. And let me just describe what you want to look for when you get to SAM and you're looking at opportunities. So let me set the scenario for you. Imagine that I'm looking at an opportunity and it's for running the Army's SharePoint environment. Let's just leave it at that. So when I go to SAM, I can see the upcoming opportunity, whatever documents might be out there already, pre-solicitation type notices, whatever that is. What I want to look at is the previous award. And so when I look at the previous award, I want to download the RFI that generally starts the process in SAM, for the acquisition lifecycle. They might have dropped a source of SOT or an RFI notice. They may have even dropped an industry day notice before the RFI to let people know what's going on. I want to download those industry slides. I want to download the RFI and analyze them. And so an example of analysis on the industry slides is I can look at the scope they might have been talking about 4 or 5 years ago, and see what they're doing today and begin to try to understand why are they going that direction. But I can also see the organizational structure they might lay out, the timeline that they had for the procurement lifecycle, and we'll go into this in a minute. But industry day slides tend to lay that out. I can also see often at an industry day event, the government might share who was at that industry event. So I can see potential competitors that were in there, potential teaming partners by looking at that list of attendees. And so I can look in, see if they're providing it. If not, I know I have an action item that, hey, why don't I follow up and just see if they've got that in their own environment. Another thing I want to download is the document, like the draft solicitations that they had. So you know of when a solicitation comes out and it's got the PWS, et cetera, but sometimes between the RFI and the the RFP, they have draft solicitations, certain period out. They might, depending on the size of the contract, they might have several. I tend to operate more in the 100 million plus range of opportunity size. And so we have more of those documents available to us. But you can look in, and Sam will generally link most of it together. And so going in there, you download that. And the last one that you want to pull down is the award. So they'll drop a notice of the award. Sometimes they'll have a lot of information in there. Make sure whatever solicitation notice type in SAM that you're downloading, that you download all their attachments as well. Just create a folder for yourself and say old, or current contract compared to new contract or something. But dump all those attachments in there. And the solicitation documents, generally whatever's in SAM, you can just print that to PDF. And now you've got it all in one folder so that when you go to do your research, you can begin looking through those. You don't want to look for today's exercise. You don't want to be looking at the PWS for tasks, etc. Here, you want to be looking at little gems, and I'm going to go into them in a minute. But an example is, I already said, was how long was the period from when the RFI dropped, right? So say the RFI dropped March 2018, whatever, right? It dropped 2018, and then the RFP dropped July 2018. I go, okay, that's a pretty consolidated schedule. Actually, the RFI comes in, they have to look at it, and then they might drop a draft PW or RFP, and then they drop the RFP. So, March to July, I go, okay, that's the time frame. When I'm noting that within my pipeline, my sales pipeline, and I'm tracking anticipated dates, I can make up my own determination of the dates. And I'm sorry for that little look on my face if you're watching the video, because what I don't like is when people go to GovWin and use their dates. Yes, GovWin is like Wikipedia. It's a great place to go, but it should not be your source. Your source should be these type of documents, your own questioning of the government buyer, right? So that's why I had that little look on my face, is I want you to gather your own information. But when you look at the RFI date to the RFP date to the award date, well, now in your pipeline, if you've got those fields for when do you think the RFI is dropping, or when do you think the RFP is coming out, how long after the RFP is due do we expect the award, those kind of things, you begin to put in your own by analyzing these documents. So the next major place you want to go is FPDS and USA spending, right? I'm not telling you about tools that you don't already know. What I'm hoping to do is to give you a little bit of different way of looking at those tools. Instead of just randomly finding opportunities, actually look in and find the data that could be helpful to you winning an opportunity that's important to you. Going into FPDS and USA spending for details, I'm just going to go through a list. I got about 10 things. And actually on my screen here, I just got some reminder bullets, so I make sure I'm telling you what I wanted to tell you. But the first thing I like, and these are not in any value order. I could have ordered the bullets, but they're really just in the order I put them. So the number of offers received, right? That's a really helpful one to me, because it tells me the possible competition size. And I can look at that and go, wow, there's only 3. Why? Was it wired? Was it a unique contract vehicle? Did nobody know about it? What was it? And often for me, I look at that and go, it was probably wired, and two other people tried to push their way in. But it allows me to just push in a little bit and know that I need to ask that question. Will this one be wired? Is it really being written towards one company, which the government can't do, but it happens, right? And then the other thing is the opposite side. There might be 100 people responding. I'm like, do I really want to be in the game where 100 companies are responding? And I don't, frankly. If I see 100 competitors going in there, that'll be something that makes me want to say no bid, right? Now, if it's my core competency and I'm better than anybody else, I might still stay in the game, but I'm going to figure out, why did so many people respond? And so you can figure it out. The cool thing about when you start proposing on opportunities that are over 20 million and you go north of that, the competition just goes down anyways, because you'll have less people who have past performances that are relevant. So the first thing I look at is number of offers received, which is basically competitors. The next thing is I'm looking at what vehicle was used, the contract vehicle. Was it Oasis, GSA, no vehicle, whatever. A big thing for me, it's not just about the vehicle, right? I like to look at the RFI and the if they had put it in there, or the draft PWS or the PWS. I like to look back at the current contract and see, did they change it? Did they originally think about going Oasis and then they switched it over to GSA, for example, or go from Oasis to Seaport or whatever? I look at that and it gives me a little bit of insight into Did somebody influence that? Is that something I can do to influence it? Each one of these bullets I'm going to be mentioning are areas that I would look at, and I recommend you look at on influencing the opportunity so it fits best for your company. And so in this case, I look at vehicles used. I want the vehicle to be obviously one I have and I can prime. Another thing I look at is the NAICS code and the PCS. I'm looking, many of these things, I won't say this again, but many of these things I'm looking to see, did they change it from when the cycle began to when it was awarded? Did they change the NAICS code, the PCS, et cetera? One thing to keep in mind about NAICS codes is, especially if you're a small business, maybe you're a larger small business who's not as small in this NAICS, but you are in this NAICS. If you can justify why this NAICS that you're a small in would be right, well, looking at this, I can go, well, let me go shape the opportunity and push it in that direction. Okay, set asides used. This is something you can look at right from the beginning, right? And there might be a piece of information that they don't talk about that you want to see if you can find out when you call a small business specialist or a contracting officer doing further research. Look at the set aside at the very earliest stage, sources sought in RFI. What were they saying? Were they, and I say this softly, but were they fairly trying to see if they could set this aside to small or woman-owned business, for example? Or were they just going through the motions and they were still just going to put it full and open? You can kind of get an understanding of that by looking at the RFI and then seeing how it progresses into the any information before the RFP drops. And then obviously when the RFP drops, you can look at that RFP and the award and see how it was actually awarded compared to what it started at. It will let you know, can I make a push for this opportunity to be SDVOSB if that's you? And then you also want to see on this new opportunity, right? How are they even thinking about it now? Often they'll talk about, and let me just insert this in because I'm inserting some tasks along with understanding the background. But if you see that they're wavering a little bit or not clearly saying, hey, we're going to make this SDVOSB or whatever set aside, then what you want to do, what I would want to do, and I recommend you do, is I would go find competimates, people who are in teaming partners or other small businesses that are SDVO, and say, hey, just letting you know this is here and an RFI is going to drop. And I would try to get in 10 or 20 of them because the more that respond, the more likely it could be set aside to 8A or woman-owned, right? And when it does, now you're eliminating a lot of competition. That's just the normal path of captures. Find some of that information, try to push your competitors out, nicely, but you push them out of the game. Okay, so I already talked about time between RFI and RFP due date. And then another great one for me is looking at the interested vendors list. In the old days, we had fbo.gov, and in there they had a really good use of interested vendors, which I was a huge fan of. I encourage people to do it. I have won millions just putting my name into something. And sam.gov now, it does like some variation of it or something, but it doesn't matter. You can also reach out to the KO or the small business specialist and see if there was an industry day and find out who attended. These are also interested vendors. One other thing to keep in mind, although I'm not an advocate of any subscription-based tool at a high cost level like GovWin or some of these others, they have their own. So if you're a subscriber of GovWin, then they have interested vendors. And so you can go in and look at an opportunity. There's a tab that basically is interested vendors, and it's people saying whether they want to sub or prime. It's a great way to begin to find out more about the opportunity by talking to those folks. Hey, what do you know? Where's it coming? Why? What are they thinking? So reaching out to those folks. I do want to do one quick caveat is that with GovWin, let's just use that as an example, right? I do not recommend GovWin for people who aren't making money. I have all sorts of recommendations on how to best use that tool. But one of the things that just really bothers me is when people think that if you're making less than $1 million, you should be on GovWin. Don't. Find a friend who's using it and ask them to look stuff up. But GovWin is a handy tool, but don't pay money when you're not making money. Wait till you come around. There's other tools to do this. But when you team up with teaming partners, they'll share information with you. Not their accounts, but they'll share information about an opportunity. So that's just an aside on there. I tend to go aside a lot on my tips. Okay, so value is another thing I look for. When I'm in USA Spending or FPDS, USA Spending, for example, at the bottom of an opportunity, if you go down, you'll see all these little tabs that you can expand. And one of them is one of the tabs you can expand as you go down is the value of the contract. We expect this to be $100 million. And then you can look at the actual or to date spending. And so if I look at something that's $100 million, but they've spent 10 million and they're in year 4, then I'm going to look at that opportunity and go, well, first off, it's not a $100 million opportunity, it's less. And the flip side is I can look at it and say it's $100 million, they're 4 years in and they're 90 million. This is a contract that gets spent. And so by looking at that, you're able to communicate back to your leadership, your colleagues, that you're understanding what the true value of that contract would be to your pipeline. Another thing that's related to that is task orders. If it's a contract vehicle you're going after, how many task orders were dropped? Is this a single award, meaning only one company won the IDIQ or contract vehicle, or is it a multiple award where multiple companies have won this contract vehicle as an award? You want to look in and say how many task orders are dropping, right? Because this all leads to bid, no bid. What's the point of going after an IDIQ that doesn't have a lot of task orders? The other thing is you can look in and go, is one company winning more than the other? Why are they winning more? That by knowing this and seeing it allows you to start putting questions down as tasks for your capture activity. Let me go figure this out. In fact, let me go talk to a company that's not winning, who's on the current vehicle, and go, why aren't you winning? Like, what do you feel like is going on? And their insight would be really helpful to your capture activities. So the last two is agency details and incumbent details. There's 2 tabs in USA Spending. You can go in and look at the agency details, which office is the funding and awarding agency. Is it the same as the ones that are coming out? Do you need to pay attention to any office shifts that happen? And then the same thing with the incumbent. You can see all the details about the incumbent, in particular things like their socioeconomic status. Was the contract awarded previously to an SDVO? Are they still an SDVO small business? By looking at those details, you can begin to understand the incumbent, because you certainly are going to go up against the incumbent if you try to go after an opportunity. So knowing this, it'll help you proceed. So I'm fire hosing at you about the capture process and how to look at opportunity background, the opportunity itself, and not the PWS or tasks. Looking at that background and how it can help you define tasks for your capture activity. So I'm doing that stuff. But if this fire hose, if you got questions, hey, what about that? Put them in the comments. I'll try to answer some. I'm leaving myself a little bit of time. I did want to say that one of the biggest challenges people have when they're trying to get background information after you've done the tool research, looking at SAM, FPDS, USA Spending, one of the biggest challenges is, well, how do I get people to ask? Well, that just gets into finding and developing relationships, right? You just need to get in and begin to talk with people. If you have information on your side, if you're prepared, talking to these people will help. So an example is if you want to find out about let me look. So NAICS code, let's just take NAICS code. And NAICS code actually is a really perfect example of how a small business can start a conversation. You can call the current KO listed on an opportunity and mention that, hey, I was looking at the previous contract and I saw the NAICS is this, and this time it's coming here. We're not a small in that NAICS. Would you consider a different NAICS? Whatever it is, right? I'm using this one example, but you can call this KO and you've started the dialogue. If you have other questions that you want to ask about, you can ask. When you go into FPDS, USA Spending in particular, they both have who uploaded the data, who was the contracting officer in the past. Quick side note, GovTribe is another subscription, which I actually really like for finding people and some interesting information. But when I use GovTribe, I can go in there and look at an opportunity, and it will show me the ever-changing people who are responsible for the contracts, the KO, the core, whatever. You have this ability to reach in and try to reach out to those people and see if they will give you past interested vendors or industry day attendees from the current contract 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? If you're able to get that, you're able to find people to try to go after it before. And if you're a company who looks at your competitors, that's a way to understand it. So I encourage you heavily to put opportunity background as an example of capture process, right? Everything about what I teach you is process. Government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. And the capture process is part of government contracting. And inside the capture process is the process step of understanding the opportunity background. So I encourage you to do that and to begin to push forward on understanding the opportunities that you're interested in. It'll help you win. It'll also help you make no bid decisions faster if you're able to look at this information and see, it's wired. It's probably not best for me. So I'm looking at the time. Looks like we're getting close to wrapping up. I'm not seeing any questions, which is fine. Feel free to shoot me questions if you're watching this in a replay in LinkedIn and YouTube, or listening to it. Feel free to drop me any questions related to it, especially put it in the comments here because it's great for other people to see it. If you like the topic, you thought it was valuable to you, give it a thumbs up. Tomorrow's live session is going to continue this capture discussion, the capture process, and I'm going to be focusing on challenges. Understanding the challenges is one of the most important things the government buyer wants. Do you understand me? There's that line, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care. One of the ways you can show a federal buyer that you care when you're writing a proposal is by understanding the challenges they face that your solution will begin to address. So tomorrow's session is going to touch on that. I wanted to remind you that on April 5th, next Tuesday, I'm doing a webinar that you can find on govconchamber.com, LinkedIn. You can find the link to that. But the webinar is for finding and building relationships that lead to federal revenue. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely go there and sign up. Just wanted to remind you, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you next time.